This video shows you at a high level the steps required to take your data into production with BMC Atrium Core, end-to-end from a third-party source to your production dataset in BMC Atrium CMDB. Before walking through the steps you'll perform, let's summarize the data flow in BMC Atrium Core for a configuration item, or CI. The best practice for importing data from a third-party source is to use Atrium Integrator, which transfers the CI to an import dataset in BMC Atrium CMDB. After that, the normalization engine replaces the values of certain key attributes with approved values from the product catalog and enforces other policies you choose for maintaining consistent data, such as row-level permissions and relationship naming. Lastly, the reconciliation engine finds matching CIs in your production dataset and other import datasets that represent the same real-world item, then merges the matching CIs into a single CI in the production dataset, taking attribute values from each dataset according to precedence rules. Once in the production dataset, BMC Remedy Asset Management and other data consumers can safely use the CI. These are the steps you need to perform to enable that end-to-end data flow. This video covers each at a high level using examples from a fictional company named Calbro Services, but you'll still need other Atrium Core documentation for the details of how to perform them. The first step is to configure permissions. For detailed instructions about this step, see the BMC Atrium CMDB Administrator's Guide. You must assign appropriate permissions rules to grant access to Atrium Core functionality and CMDB data. Here you see Calbro Services mapping their CMDB data change rule to a computed group, adding a regular group to that computed group, and then adding a user to that regular group. Mapping a role to a computed group offers the most flexibility because you can add multiple regular groups to the group that has the role. You can also restrict access to particular classes or attributes. Here you see Calbro Services removing the CMDB Data View roles ability to see the BMC Person class in the user interface. If you have a multi-tenant environment or will otherwise divide access to CIs between groups, you should create default instance permissions so that the appropriate permissions are applied to each instance at creation based on its account. Here you see Calbro creating default read and write permissions for CIs of all classes created in the Finance Department's account. The next step is to configure BMC Atrium Product Catalog. For detailed instructions about this step, see the BMC Atrium Product Catalog and DML Guide. The class you choose to instantiate for a new CI is a means of categorizing the CI, but you can categorize it down to a more granular level with manufacturer and model names and the three-tiered set of categorization attributes. The product catalog holds the normalized values for these attributes for a given hardware or software product. These are applied to CIs during normalization so that all instances of a given product have the same values. When a CI matches the product name and manufacturer of a product catalog entry, it receives that entry's values for the categorization attributes. Populate your product catalog with entries for all the hardware and software products you will track in your CMDB. You can do this manually from the product catalog console or import data from external files. The best practice categorization values are listed in the product catalog and DML guide. Not all CIs will exactly match the product name and manufacturer of a product in the product catalog to allow them to be normalized. If you know some common values that your CIs will contain and the products that these CIs represent, you can use aliases to change the values of a CI's model and manufacturer name attributes first, so that when the CI is then compared against the product catalog, these attributes will match the product name and manufacturer of the correct product. Create product name and manufacturer aliases for common values that your CIs will be discovered or imported with. These aliases operate independently, so a CI can match either a product name alias, a manufacturer alias, or both. Then the product catalog is searched for matches against the updated CI. Here you see Calbro creating an alias that will change the discovered manufacturer name Microsoft to Microsoft Corporation so that their CIs will match Microsoft Corporation in the product catalog. The product catalog also allows you to specify which software products are approved to be in your environment and therefore part of your definitive media library. You can also approve hardware products to create a definitive hardware library. By default, all products are unapproved. When you have established your approved products, the normalization engine can flag or even reject CIs that are instances of unapproved products. Approval is specific to a company, so if you're in a multi-tenancy environment, you can approve different products for each company. The next step is to create import datasets for each of your data providers. For detailed instructions about this step, see the BMC Atrium CMDB Normalization and Reconciliation Guide. You must create a dataset for each data provider that will populate your CMDB. This is a prerequisite for configuring data import, normalization, and reconciliation. Here you see Calbro creating a dataset for data imported from their third-party discovery tool. You can skip this step for any BMC data providers you are using, as these products create their own datasets. The next step is to configure Atrium Integrator to import CIs and relationships from your external data store into BMC Atrium CMDB. For detailed instructions about this step, see the Atrium Integrator User's Guide. To enable Atrium Integrator to transfer data between your source database or file and BMC Atrium CMDB, you must configure connections to both of these data stores. You can reuse these data stores for multiple transformations or jobs in Atrium Integrator. Next, you must create a job with the Integration Job Builder wizard to specify the CIs and relationships that you want to transfer. You can use templates to more easily specify the CI and relationship types. For each CI type that you select, you map attributes from your source data store to attributes of a class in BMC Atrium CMDB. Be sure to map unique values to all the attributes that you use in identification rules for reconciliation, and if you are using multi-tenancy, map appropriate values to the Account ID attribute. You also specify a schedule to run the job. After creating a job, you can edit it to add intermediate steps for cleaning up or manipulating your data before it is added to BMC Atrium CMDB. The job you created using the wizard becomes a series of transformations, steps, and hops that you edit with the Pentaho Spoon client. Here you see Calbro Services editing a step to force the capitalization of the hostname attribute of BMC Computer System CIs. The next step is to configure normalization for your import dataset. For detailed instructions about this step, see the BMC Atrium CMDB Normalization and Reconciliation Guide. Make sure that normalization is enabled for your import dataset and that other options meet your needs. For example, whether unapproved CIs should be normalized. Calbro has chosen not to normalize such CIs for their import dataset. If you are interested in taking advantage of normalization features for this dataset, such as enforcing permissions or suite rollup, configure those too. And make sure that the class configuration contains the classes whose instances you want to be normalized. You might need to add to or subtract from the list. To run normalization against your import dataset, you need to create a job. The first time you run this job, it must process an entire dataset full of non-normalized CIs, so to improve performance, we recommend running a batch job. After the first run, you should change the job to run continuous normalization, where it can process new and modified CIs as they accumulate. For as long as your job is in batch mode, you should schedule it to run shortly after your data import completes. Calbro Services import runs nightly at midnight and takes about 90 minutes, so they schedule their batch normalization job at 2 a.m. To test your normalization configuration, use the Normalization Simulation utility, which shows you CIs that would fail normalization and products that would be created in the product catalog. These results can help you decide whether your configuration needs any changes and whether you need to create additional aliases. The next step is to configure reconciliation for your import dataset. For detailed instructions about this step, see the BMC Atrium CMDB Normalization and Reconciliation Guide. Reconciliation consists of two steps, identify and merge. Identification finds CIs and relationships in multiple datasets that represent the same real-world items, using rules that specify particular attributes to compare for each class. Matching instances are assigned the same identity across all datasets. The merge process forms a composite version of an identified instance in your production dataset, using attribute values from other datasets according to precedence rules. This lets you utilize the strengths of each data provider. You must create a reconciliation job that identifies your import dataset against the BMC Asset production dataset and then merges your import dataset into BMC Asset. The easiest and recommended way is to use a standard job. A standard job uses a global set of standard rules that work for most cases. If you examine the standard rules and decide they don't meet your needs, you can edit them and still use a standard job. You can create a custom job if you need more flexibility than the standard rules provide, but this is more complex. As with normalization, we recommend you run your job in scheduled or batch mode the first time for best performance against a large number of instances. You can switch to continuous mode once the job is only processing small numbers of new and changed instances. For as long as your job is in scheduled mode, you should schedule it to run shortly after normalization completes. To keep non-normalized CIs out of your production dataset, we recommend that you select the Process Normalized CIs Only option for all your identify and merge jobs. As a best practice, you should also configure a purge job to periodically and permanently delete instances that have been marked as deleted. This would be a custom job. We've now covered all the high-level steps. Once you've configured these various functions of BMC Atrium Core and tested them on representative samples of your data, you can run them to bring all your data into the production dataset of your CMDB, as in the data flow shown earlier. You might want to pause playback here to note the names of these manuals that provide the detailed instructions you'll need. We hope this video has helped you understand the high-level steps you need to perform to take your data into production with BMC Atrium Core and identify the areas of the BMC Atrium Core documentation that can help you perform them. To help you plan these steps, we recommend the BMC Atrium Core Concepts and Planning Guide. Thank you for watching.